Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 94 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have a guest by the name of Alyssa, which she has withheld her last name for privacy purposes, which is perfectly all right on this show, because Alyssa is a neurodivergent home organization strategist who helps people with autism and ADHD to take the shame and anxiety out of home organization and build successful systems that work for them so they can stop stressing and truly relax in their space. Using her background in education and psychology, she focuses on recognizing the barriers to succeed caused by unhelpful emotional patterns and beliefs and helps clients to overcome these by learning methods and systems that allow them to finally have the functional space they really want. I love this episode, as you all can imagine, because it's right up my alley of being autistic myself. But I think there's some bigger underpinnings to this overall conversation that we have about organizing our lives, not just in the things in which we have to do on the day-to-day, but the actual space that we go home to. Is it organized? Is it properly arranged so that it's functional in nature? Now, I grew up in a household sometimes that was full of a lot of stuff, and my mom has done a great job of purging a lot of those things out as she's gotten older. But I still have those tendencies as a kid that have led into my adulthood of sometimes being a little bit more messier than I really wanted to be. What we actually use as our home organization system can make such a big difference, and that's why I really enjoyed my conversation with Alyssa and what she has to share with us today. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Alyssa. Alyssa, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Thanks for having me. That's such a fundamental part of organizing that people don't really think about. So I'm thrilled to be able to do it.
I feel like I'm going to get more organized after talking to you today. And I know for some of my listeners, I think that they're going to get a lot out of this conversation too, because part of even what I do in coaching is really reorganizing thoughts and patterns of ways in which we do things. And I feel like you and I have some common traits with that today. So I'm really been excited for this conversation. And really, I want to start off with this. I've already let the audience know a little bit about your background, but I'm kind of curious. Although you have gone through doing this sort of business now that you have, what actually led you into wanting to do more of organization, helping people declutter? I mean, I feel like you're in this sort of advancing realm of different people I've encountered in my life that want to help others with getting themselves organized. So what made you and led you into that?
Yeah, so my background is actually in elementary education and psychology. And the whole organizing thing really started during the pandemic. Suddenly, I was at home all the time. And when you're leaving your home for 8 hours a day, you have a lot more license to ignore how cluttered and how chaotic it is. But when you're there all the time, it's in your face and you have to deal with it. And I was feeling so down on myself all the time because I was thinking, everyone else can do this. Why am I having such a hard time figuring out just where to put my stuff? And then around in that same time, I got a diagnosis and found out that I have autism and ADHD.
Wow.
And then it clicked for me, and I was thinking, if I had a student who had something they were really serious about, they really wanted to do, they were working really hard, and they were not succeeding, I wouldn't talk to them the way I'm talking to me. I wouldn't tell them they're lazy, that they're a bad kid, that they should just try harder, that there's something fundamentally wrong with them. Absolutely not. I would start looking around their environment and asking myself, what is here or what is not here that's not setting them up for success? Because they're obviously trying. They obviously want to do this. Something is not setting them up to be successful in this thing they're trying to do. So what can I change about the physical space? What can I change about the way I'm approaching the situation that could make a difference for them? Once I started doing that for myself, things started falling into place all over. And it made so much difference almost immediately.
I find that really fascinating because we were just literally talking about this before we started about how we have these late term diagnoses later on in life of, oh, we're autistic. Oh, we have ADHD. And it changes so much about how we process and differentiate between different types of people, different types of things. And I think I understand completely what you're talking about when it comes to this because even for some people that have gone through the pandemic, and have realized, my goodness, I might need to shape up or change my career or change things in my life. I think even one of those things that needed to be done was having a check even around ourselves, what we physically surround ourselves with, because it can create a lot of different emotions and different feelings inside of ourselves. But Alyssa, I find it interesting too that you have 2 degrees, like you mentioned. Why did you go to school initially? Were you looking to do something in a different type of career before you started this?
My original plan was to teach elementary school, specifically in either sort of the special education, gifted and talented kind of area, because those are the students that through the school experience that I worked with really well when others maybe struggled. And then, of course, once I got my diagnosis, it became very clear that I work well with those students because I'm like them. I understand them. I understand where they're coming from. And sort of the way that education was kind of during the pandemic, and then I had some health struggles of my own, and it just became very clear that I was not going to be able to thrive in that environment, and I was also not going to be able to set my students up to thrive, and I knew I needed to step back and do something else.
I think that we often go in one path. I even said to my listeners in the past that I wanted to be a lawyer, and I was so dead set in doing that, but I decided to change my career path after we all went through, I should say, the Great Recession of 2008. And I thought, okay, well, maybe doing this, what I want to do now, can make a big difference in what we're trying to achieve. But you started this business, Alyssa's Yellow House, and I love the name. And there's an awesome story. I'm not going to share it. I want you to share it because it's definitely your perspective of what you called this business. Because I'll give you my thoughts after you introduce it because there's a little bit of a tie-in, I feel, to this with me personally. But I'll let you share why you called your business Alyssa's Yellow House.
When I was very young, my family lived out in this sort of rural-ish area. It was kind of like the outer edge of a suburb. And we lived on this really long street. And on the way to school and on the way home from school, twice a day we would pass this lovely yellow Victorian house. Had this giant wraparound front porch, huge front window. They always decorated all the way to the hilt for the holidays. It was beautiful. And in my little kid brain, now it seems ridiculous, but when you're 7, it seems absolutely logical that whoever lives here just must not have any problems. Their life must be great because obviously this place is so gorgeous that whoever lives here must just have it all together. As I grew up, I realized that's kind of ridiculous. Everyone's going to have problems no matter where you live, no matter what your home looks like. And the real thing that matters is the energy that your home has and how you feel inside your home. Whether it's a house or an apartment or whether you share it with other people doesn't really matter. What matters is how you feel when you arrive and when you spend time there. And so what I want to do with the business especially, and also just personally in my own home, is to cultivate that kind of energy where when you enter your home, everything seems just a little bit more okay. No matter what happened that day while you were gone, everything seems a little bit better because your home is such a calm, timeless place for you to just be and just relax. And I don't think that home should be stressful. And so that kind of yellow house energy, wherever you happen to be located, is something that you can build and cultivate regardless of whether you actually live in a yellow house or not.
Wow. You said three things that are on my mind right now as you were talking about this experience of walking by and seeing this yellow house. Because, first off, the connection I was alluding to earlier was the fact that the image in my mind growing up was growing up on a farm, which my mom and dad had alpine Nubian goats. And I always have this big red barn in my mind, and I can still picture it this day. They tore it down from where I originally grew up, which was in the Lancaster County area, and it was really beautiful in Pennsylvania around that time because there wasn't as many developed houses as there are today. So I have that image in my mind. I always thought, man, I wish I could have that one day again. But there's something else that you said that is really pivotal that I think is really important, is that what might be looking good on the outside might not be as good in the inside, which is what you deal with, which is looking in the inside. So I really curious because now I want to tie in a little bit of what you had mentioned earlier about diagnosis and autism and ADHD. Do you feel that you have an insider advantage of helping people that might not have those sort of issues, or I shouldn't even call it issues, I should call them neurodivergent opportunities or abilities, unlike other people? In other words, do you see yourself having a competitive advantage over other people because of having those diagnoses, especially later in life? Because we were talking about that too, that we both had that happen later on in our lives.
I certainly think it gives me a different perspective. I don't know if I would call it an advantage because when you're working with home organization, it's so personal that I've had people tell me that they had a home organizer come out to their home and organize everything, and it was so beautiful. And then 2 weeks later, it was a disaster again, and they felt terrible. And that's just a mismatch between the person and the organizer. And I don't actually do in-home organization. What I try to do is give people the tools so that they can do it themselves and really understand the organization process. And I think that that is something that's kind of missing right now from the home organization conversation is what actually is organizing? How does it work? We use organizing as almost a buzzword and we assume that everyone knows what it means, but that's actually not really as simple and cut and dried as we would like it to be, because what's organized for you and what's organized for me might be very different from each other. And so the organization process, I feel like I do have some additional insight because of the way that my brain works and the way that I see things. Things that seem very obvious to me often don't to others. And I think that does give me an interesting perspective that has maybe been missing from the home organization cultural conversation.
As I approach over a year now with my own diagnosis of autism at a later stage in life, I often have been thinking about it as a superpower of sorts. And I think that you have a perspective of a superpower when you do that. And you touched on something that I'm kind of curious just to draw some comparisons or contrasts from this. How do you work with people that might have already had somebody in the house to help them and it didn't work out? What is one of your first steps to help somebody if they're trying to get organized again, to empower them to do that? What is usually your technique to help them get to that next level?
I think the first step is to really identify not just what are the problem areas, but why are those areas a problem for you? Because we like to make these very broad statements that are not actually that helpful to us. So people will say, well, I hate my closet. Okay, but why? Can you tell me more about why it doesn't work for you? What is in your closet that you don't like? If the problem is really just that you have too many clothes that you don't wear or that no longer fit you, that's a separate problem from I only have one bar in my closet to hang things on and I need more than that, and I need a different system in my closet to actually be able to store all of my clothing. Or maybe it's I don't have a good place for my shoes and so I kick them off on the floor of the closet and now they're just in a big pile. But all of those problems are so much easier to solve than a very generic, I hate my closet, because that doesn't give you anywhere to go. You can't solve, I hate my closet, but you can solve, I don't have good shoe storage.
I think it's untying that emotional connection every time we have that thought and being able to say to ourselves, we can do this. We can change the thought pattern. We can change the ways in which we're taking action on it, which I've shared many episodes with my listeners about the importance of that too, because I think it's really an understanding of creating that dynamic of what is causing that in the first place, removing that from the equation, but now being able to take meaningful action to help showcase or even display what some of that progress can be. Speaking of progress, I noticed that on your website you have the All Peach No Pit workbook. And I think there is a couple people that come to mind that I know in my life that could absolutely use this, and it's really relating to the kitchen. So can you talk a little bit about the workbook and the premise of it and what it helps other people do? Because I know that it's available for purchase on your website.
Sure. So I decided that I needed a really good way to package my whole organizing system. And when I say an organizing system, my goal is not to teach you to organize like I organize. That's not going to help you. That's how I organize. You are going to organize differently. So my goal is to teach you the skills and the systems that you need to set up your own organizational system that's going to work for you. When I decided I needed to package this all up so that I could share it with other people, I then decided I need to start in the kitchen because that seems to be one of everyone's problem areas. And it makes sense. We're only basically in the kitchen when we're working, and we're in there multiple times a day working. Basically, everywhere else in the house, we're either going there occasionally to relax, or it's like the office and we can shut the door on it and walk away when our workday is over. So it's really important that the kitchen is a place that you feel good about. Because often when we think about homes that we feel functioned well, which for a lot of people that I talk to, they picture their grandparents. And they always tell me stories about their grandma in the kitchen. And I'm no different. I remember my grandmother in the kitchen as well, making things, and just the family center in her home has always been her kitchen. And so the story of building this workbook out was based in that, and then was also based heavily in my autism and my ADHD. I need things in small chunks. If you give me a huge project, I am already overwhelmed, and often it's not even necessary to have a huge project. We think that if we want big results, we have to make big change. And most of the time, it's really the small changes that make the day-to-day difference. So the workbook is broken up into very short little sections that you can do in just a few minutes. And it moves you through sort of what I think of as the 3 different components of organization. There's the mindset component, which is, how are you thinking about it? How are you mentally and emotionally setting yourself up for success? How are you dealing with the trauma of organizing? When we think of organizing, we think of nice little colored bins sitting side by side with cute labels. But there is so much more to organizing than that, because there are all of these cultural messages that we've been getting from media, from parents, from friends, from ourselves about judgments that we should make about us if we aren't effortlessly good at organizing. And we have to work through all that before we're going to make any more progress. So the first section of the workbook is, let's talk about the emotional weight of organizing and how we can make it work for us and how we can get around the difficult parts so that we can be more successful. Part 2 is the physical organization of your space. Where does your stuff go? And kind of tying in with what works best for you, which is not necessarily what works best for someone else. And then the third part is your methods, which is how you and your physical space interact. How do you actually use the space that you've created? And what does that conversation between you and your space look like? And how can you use that to find areas that are really functional, where you can see, what have I done super well? Or areas where you can see, this is the thing that's not really serving me, I can improve this. And also, I now know how to do that. And I know what that looks like when it works really well.
Wow, because I have to say this. I had a lady on just the last interview episode that I had on the podcast, and we were talking about paranormal activity or things of that nature, in which she's a psychic and has these medium conversations or energy levels from different spirits that live in the house. And I feel that this is such a good tie-in because it isn't just about the spirits that surround us. It's really about the things that we do to prepare ourselves to have that organization conversation for people. Because I often think of the TV show Hoarders, where there's a lot of emotional attachment with why hoarding happened in the first place. And trying to go in and immediately say, this is junk, these are things that are good, you need to keep the things that are good and get rid of the junk. That could be a very traumatic episode for somebody that is really attached to those sort of items, because there is a significance to it, which you've touched on, the mental, emotional aspects of it. And we need to process that in a healthy way. I guess in a way, I have this curiosity question for you. How does your family handle this when you're getting ready to do some of the same things that you do with your clients? Do you help them being your family, actually go through that process and maybe process some of those things? I mean, I imagine that you have some of those sort of situations come up where they're like, no, Mom, I don't want to do that. No, wife, I don't want to do that.
It actually works really well because the reason that there are so many conflicts, it seems like, in organizing is because it's so emotionally charged. And when you're using a system that allows you to process those emotions as you go, it's much less emotionally charged to then make it work with a partner or whoever else you happen to live with. And for me, at least, we have sort of had to work through in my family. These are the things that I need that work well for me. What are the things that you need that work well for you? And even though they're not often the same things, they are usually at least complementary things. So the things that someone else really struggles with will be an area that works well for me. Other things are just stuff like I do most of the cooking in my family, so nobody else is going to try to organize my spice rack or my pantry because they don't really use them. So since I'm the primary person who uses those spaces, I have the primary say in how they're organized. My husband puts away the dishes most of the time. And so the dishes that are not for cooking, he puts them where he wants them to go, where it makes sense for him to put them away. Because I'm not doing that, so I don't really have the primary say in what we're going to do in that space. And so finding those sort of areas of common ground, and then those areas where you can take more ownership and also everyone else still feels good about that, is really critical in figuring out how to work together with the people you live with. And it's so much easier when you have a system of looking at it that doesn't just set it up as a me versus you, me versus my space kind of thing, where it's constructive and we all work together to make it functional and to make it really serve the needs of everybody who lives here.
I kind of think of the analogy of I'm driving the car when we're driving down the road. I should have control of the radio because I want to listen to certain thing that will keep me awake, will keep me going, and I don't want anybody else touching the radio. It isn't your turn to drive, so hold on. So in a way, you're kind of saying the same premise in which organize it in a way that is primary to you, but at the same time, knowing that there's going to be other people sometimes in the kitchen or even organizing for that matter in life is being able to have that conversation, which a great book that I have always referenced on the show is from a collection of different authors, one of them being Joseph Grenny, called Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue. And I love it because it talks about the system of having that difficult conversation. But it isn't about giving up or conceding on a certain point, but being able to work out the differences. So I feel that we all have that ability, that energy pattern to be able to work out those differences as well. Alyssa, I'm really curious as we get closer to the end of our time here about a successful client that you had. And maybe they had a completely different situation than maybe other people that you routinely work with, but they were really difficult. Maybe they were very challenging to work with. Maybe it was some other sort of circumstance. But I was wondering, without saying their name whatsoever, because we always protect the confidentiality of other people, especially me being a coach, I'm wondering if you could share a success story that you had that really sticks with you, even to this day, that you've worked with somebody to help them, whether it's through organization or through some other means.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most impactful clients that I ever had for me, and I think also for the client, was someone who was very insistent that the problem was not organization. The problem was that she just hated her kitchen. She just didn't want to be in there. It wasn't that it was disorganized, it wasn't that it was dirty. She just didn't want to be in there. It wasn't until we started breaking down why is that and figuring out various things. One of the biggest things that I found for this client was this was also a neurodivergent client. And one of the things that she had really struggled with more conventional organizing was what's the first thing they all say is just make it a habit, right? Which works great if you form habits. If
Yes.
you are neurodivergent and you don't easily form habits in the same way that non-neurodivergent people do, you're just destined to believe that you are bad at organizing. And so one of the things that we found was that she felt like she was constantly dropping the ball in a lot of places because she wasn't maintaining these unmaintainable habits. And she was having this narrative running that since she couldn't just effortlessly do it, that meant that she was bad somehow. Then she developed an aversion to just her whole kitchen, and she just didn't even want to go in there. And it was a long process of reevaluating what is the problem really and what can we do about it. And okay, instead of building habits, we're going to change things to rely on routines. Because one of the things that the neurodivergent brain is super good at is following a routine. If we have a routine, we are golden. We can do that routine all day, every day. We just have to have something that starts that routine. So we built out some routines for her so that she felt like she had more control over the things that she was struggling with. We reorganized some of the physical components of her kitchen to prompt her to follow those routines. And we put away some things that were sitting out, and we brought out some things that are put away so that she would see them and it would remind her, oh, yeah, I need to start that routine. She went from being someone who told me that she hated her kitchen, she hated cooking. She got in touch with me and she was just giggling. And she said, oh my gosh, my extended family is coming in from out of town. I am so excited to cook for them. I'm so excited to have them in for a meal. I know how it works. I already know what I'm going to do. I already know how I'm going to serve it. I know how I'm set up for this. This feels so good. And I'm so excited to have them come in instead of finding out that they're coming and then immediately worrying about what am I going to do. I just get to be excited about having them be here. And that was so rewarding for me to see that I'm not the only person who has been impacted by this system of organization in such a strong way. It has that kind of impact for other people as well. And it was just really a wonderful experience for her and also for me.
It puts a smile on my face to hear that too, because it's almost as if we put that work together with different people and we see that pay off. So it's not just the things that we do in our lives that we work with others and we have that fulfillment, but seeing that happen with somebody else is always a awesome feeling too. Thanks for sharing that, Alyssa. I have one final question for you. And being that you are neurodivergent, just like I am, I really feel that our audience might have a real deep appreciation for what you have to say about this question, which is what would you say to someone that might be going through this sort of struggle with being autistic or having ADHD and they haven't come to grips yet of what they are in this world or trying to figure out what to do to kind of break that routine pattern that they have going on, what would you say to somebody that had just found out recently that they were diagnosed, maybe even later in life for that matter, of how they can find their purpose? How can they use that diagnosis to their advantage? I wonder if you have any insights you could share with my listeners about that.
The first thing I would tell them is that you've probably been trying to use a lot of systems that were not necessarily built for you. And the only bad system is the system that doesn't work for you. It doesn't have to be the same way that everybody else is doing it. If you have recently been diagnosed, nothing has fundamentally changed about who you are. What you have now is a deeper understanding of how you can structure things to make your life easier and better and more fulfilling. And that's a wonderful opportunity that I hope everyone gets at some point in their life, whether it's through diagnosis or through discovering their passion or whatever it may be. I want everyone to have the opportunity to live as authentically as possible, whether that's through organization or through a career path or through a hobby or whatever it may be. Lean in to the things that make you feel fulfilled. And if it doesn't make you fulfilled, start looking at how you might be able to, if not completely get rid of it, then at least reduce the amount of energy that you have to spend on that. Because that's going to free up so much more energy for you to spend in ways that are more fulfilling.
Well said. And I'm just like applauding you over here because it is such a good answer to what we can do to help achieve that success, because everyone's entitled to it. Everybody has that opportunity. It's just about building those systems around us, and they're not all alike. Alyssa, thanks for sharing what you've shared with us today. I wonder if you could take the last few moments here and just share with my listeners, how can they reach out to you? How can they engage with you if they're interested in an organization? How can they help with maybe finding that first step? I'm going to give you the last few moments to give our listeners that information.
My Instagram is at Alyssa's Yellow House. My website is alyssa'syellowhouse.com. And my current absolute favorite place to be is in my Facebook group, which is also Alyssa's Yellow House. And it's a very interactive place where there are people that are sharing kind of their own organizational struggles and their successes. And it's very collaborative, and it just feels like a really wonderful place where we can all share and learn from each other. My Instagram is very responsive. I love receiving messages on Instagram. Please get in touch with me if you have any questions. I also answer emails. It's very easy to get a hold of me, and I am more than happy to talk to people about this because I am very passionate about it. I know how much it's changed my life and what a positive impact it's had for me, and I want that for everyone else too.
I can tell, even throughout this last half hour, of the excitement and the enthusiasm that you have for helping others. And even with just a small thing that maybe other people don't really think about on their day-to-day, about just keeping an organized house or keeping organized in general, it's really about creating those opportunities to engage, to help each other, which I love the Facebook group that you have. I think that all those things are very important. I'll put everything about your business and even the Instagram, even the Facebook into the episode notes. So listeners, if you want to go check that out, check out Alyssa, help her out, and definitely engage with her. But Alyssa, for all these things that you do and being a fellow neurodivergent person in this world, making a difference no matter what it is, thanks for sharing your heart with us today. Thanks for being on Speaking from the Heart. And I really enjoyed our conversation and getting to learn a lot more about yourself and your business.
I really want to thank Alyssa again for being part of the show, because now I know where to put my stuff. That's right. Now I know how to functionally organize myself so that every time that I have guests over at my house or my apartment where I live currently, I don't have to worry so much anymore about having to find a place for everything, worry about what other people might think about my living situation. But you have to understand that this is not as simple of a subject as it might have led by itself having this conversation today. And I think even Alyssa had alluded to the fact, too, that this is not an easy change for many people that might be going through these sort of situations where they don't know where to functionally organize in their life. I have worked with clients that have even had some difficulty struggling with their organizational systems, and we actually have to take a step back to talk about what are some strategies and some coping mechanisms in order to overcome some of those pitfalls that we might fall into when it comes to the space that they live in, let alone the opportunity to work on some of the tasks that we do in coaching, whether it's in a personal or professional development setting. I think it's about understanding how we pivot and how we create those aspirations of greatness in our own lives that makes such a big difference in our organizational style. Okay, I'm already hearing it. Josh, this is crazy. Yet again, in another episode at the end, you're talking about how something that's completely unrelated functions into something that is completely related into what you're doing. Why do you keep doing that? Here's the deal. If you ever want to aspire for greatness, you have to be organized. It's one of the basic principles and sometimes even the basic tenets of many leadership models that you read. Even my own boss at my full-time job would tell you that it's about being organized, being able to understand where things are at within a certain process or procedure that will allow you to keep on working towards that greatness. But if you're not even organized at work, what makes you think that you're even going to be organized at home? And home is how you feel. It creates that connotation. It creates that opportunity to create not only those ways in which we feel really good about ourselves, not only how we cultivate our energy overall, but how we will live on the day-to-day basis. So let's take a step back. What does your house look like right now? In the inside, on the outside. Then, let's take a look at you. What's happening in the inside and also on the outside? I think that we have to understand that each part of the kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom, and any other ancillary rooms that you might have in your house or apartment that you live in, each have its own functional requirements. I think we have to be intentional about how we utilize those, especially when it comes to balance and moderation. For example, if you're spending a lot of time in the bathroom, I don't think it might be necessarily about how you're getting ready or how you're even feeling about one of these things that you do on a day-to-day basis. It might be something happening even more. Maybe you've been sick quite a lot, and that's why you're spending a lot of time in the bathroom. Maybe you're taking more than enough showers. Maybe you're over-obsessing about your cleanliness and worrying about what other people might think. But then let's talk about your bedroom. Are there clothes strewn all over the floor? Have you made your bed recently? Have you even washed the pillowcases, the sheets that you sleep on? Anything that has to do with feeling a little bit better about who you are and your hygiene as a whole. But the kitchen. What are you putting in the cupboards? Is it expired food? Is it food that's not so good for you? It has always been said that the colors that you have in your refrigerator make a big difference about the nutritional requirements that you're putting inside your body. But then there's the living room. How much time are you spending there? Are you playing video games? Are you watching too much television? Or are you using it to learn new things? We have to create an environment in each of these different rooms in order for us to feel a little bit better about who we are and what we want to do. And I think Alyssa would be a prime example of those sort of people that would be willing to help you, no matter what kind of struggles you might have, to create that success. To process some of that initial anger, that trauma, that organizational structure that you have that might not even exist in the first place. But more importantly, taking the first step and being able to interact with somebody else. We have to be able to learn to not only cope with the ways in which we interact with each of these rooms, but we have to put in practice what we are being taught. Alyssa will only show you if you're willing to work on it. And that's still one of the biggest premises of many of the episodes that we've discussed this sort of topic. You can listen to it as much as you possibly can. But if you're not willing to take the actionable steps that will help you to create that best value of who you are, if you're not willing to be able to work on what needs to be addressed, even if you don't want to take the small baby steps that need to be taken in order to learn a new habit or new skill, change will not become a routine for you. You have to live an authentic life by building the systems in your life that allow you to be able to function appropriately. And it all starts in where you live. I have lived for many years in my life not working on those basic baby steps, and that set me back a very long time. I've talked about this on other episodes in which not only have I struggled with the emotional impacts of it, but it's affected even my relationships for that matter. Being able to have good friendships with people that I truly care about, which I can only count on one hand, is very hard in itself. Now, that is not to say that quantity should be over quality. But at the same time, I know that there's been a lot of people in my life that I could have had over at my apartment or my house if I would have started to work on the basic elements of what we have talked about in today's episode. So what are the problems that you're facing? It's not as simple as just writing them down, but it's about taking actionable steps that allow you to address those different opportunities that exist. If you are really worried about what's happening on the outside of your house more so than what's happening in the inside of your house, it might be time to start focusing on those things that are inside. If the plumbing needs to be fixed in your house so that you have running water, let alone electricity for that matter, it might be time to hire a qualified specialist to come over and start fixing those things. It's no different than hiring a coach to help you with the basic fundamentals of the things that you need to organize and structure so you can have appropriate opportunities to succeed. This is about building a foundation. If you don't have a healthy foundation, it will be very tough for you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, let alone have a place to even sleep, bathe, cook, and coexist in this awesome world. Because you are awesome in itself, and you should not have to live in your own filth, let alone your own opportunity to be able to excel over those different things that might have been holding you back. Now, I know that I've been preaching a lot in these last few minutes, but I know that it's easier said than done. So I want to speak to those for just a moment that might be still struggling on figuring out what's the best way to move forward, especially with all this information that we've presented today. Let's validate the fact that there are difficult times for many people being able to address some of these basic issues, and I get it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we've mentioned in many earlier episodes, talks about just having a place to live, food in our belly, and feeling like we're secure in our own belongings. And I know that it's much easier said than done to be able to do all those things, especially in this ever-changing world, especially with the things that we have as difficult moments in our lives. But it's not to say that that should be your excuse, because there are many different programs out there, whether you're in the United States or abroad, that can help you get back on your own 2 feet. What are the problems that you have? Start listing them out today. Do you not have the things that you need as the basic necessities, such as canned food, a can opener, a bowl to put the contents in, let alone a microwave to heat it up, let alone a stove to possibly cook on? I know that all these things can be very hard to do, especially if you have limited resources. But you're never alone. If you are looking for resources, feel free to do a search on the web and find any of those local food pantries, church organizations, or any other special events being put on by your local police department or other organizations that might be helping others that are less fortunate. Because it all does start with just feeling a little bit of extra security. I think that's what Alyssa is selling to us today. I think that's what we all need to have a little bit of in our lives. Because if we're able to build that system of feeling like we can exist, especially at our own home, we're not only going to have the opportunity to grow and learn new basic skills, but we're going to be able to create new values, new aspirations, new opportunities, whether they are from the outside or inside. And we're going to be able to help so many different people change radically what they have inside their hearts, minds, and souls. Because that's what this is all about. It isn't just about what we have inside and outside. It's about what we have as extra security. And we want to be able to address those untapped emotional issues that might exist because you don't have the heart or confidence to actually take that first step. And it's okay to ask for help. Because look at me. If somebody like me can address those sort of problems and be able to get to the other side, I think that you can too. And there's no shame in ever asking for help, because we can be able to learn new tips, tricks, and tools if we're just willing to open ourselves up to those unimaginable possibilities, because they are something that can become reality. And you're worth being part of this reality. Stop living in the way in which you feel that you can't do anything about it. There are people that are willing to help you, and they're going to help you no matter what, to help you get to that next step in that overall journey that you're living in. Thanks for listening to episode number 94 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.